Hey everyone, this is your read along for 5.02, and this module is about Expressionism. German Expressionists did not share a common style, yet their collective work revealed an intense personal response to the world around them. Before the start of World War I in 1914, German painters took the boldness of Fauvist imagery in new directions. Many artists, however, were deeply affected by their war, and their work began to exhibit a darker quality. So this just says that these paintings, they're not all going to look the same. They don't have the same style. And as the war started and they started to have stronger feelings about what was going on in the world, their artwork started to evolve or change. In the summer of 1914, Europe's long interlude of peace was shattered. The continent's major powers, divided among two alliances, plunged into war. Both sides hoped for a quick victory, but the conflict soon devolved into a stalemate and the horrors of trench warfare. Casualties mounted with no end in sight. Then in 1917, America came in on the side of France, Great Britain, Italy, and Russia. Beleaguered and exhausted, Germany and its Austrian and Turkish allies surrendered in 1918. The cost was almost beyond reckoning. I can't say that. Reckoning. 16 million dead, economies devastated, cities destroyed, an entire generation scarred by the experience. Many of Europe's prominent artists had fought in the trenches. Some were killed, others wounded. For those who survived, the world would never look the same. The joyous hues of Monet and Matisse and the cheery themes of Renoir and Seurat also all seemed like a cruel joke to people who had endured 4 years in a death-filled landscape drained of color and hope. In the aftermath of World War I, Europe took on a decidedly different look. So this just basically said, because of the war, art changed. People had different views on the world. They were tired. So many people died that the art world really changed and artwork was changing. A number of artists working before, during, and after the war made highly emotional works of art by distorting their subjects to communicate intense emotion. Art historian labeled their work expressionist. In Germany, some expressionists banded together to create formal movements. The artists of each movement experimented with new modes of representing their inner feelings. Although the term expressionism refers to art of the 20th century, expressionist tendencies can be traced to earlier times. In his Eisenheim altarpiece, German Renaissance painter Matthias Grunewald distorted the forms and colors of the figures to communicate the agony of Christ's crucifixion. Vincent van Gogh and Edward Munch also used bold color and brushworks to express their intense feelings about their subjects. And you can see pictures of all of these that we've studied. Wassily Kandinsky, born to a wealthy Russian family in 1866, Wassily Kandinsky began his career as an attorney and a scholar. As a young professional, he made several trips to Germany where he became enthralled with bold, expressive qualities of modern art. He was so inspired at the age of 30, he quit the law. And dedicated himself to the study of art. He left Russia and settled into Munich to focus on his painting. Kandinsky's early works were representational and many were based on Russian folklore themes. Yet he yearned for a more personal way to express his thoughts and ideas. Particularly, his disdain for the materialism he felt was rampant in industrialized Western society. Around 1910, he began to experiment with less representational images and to cultivate a more aggressive, spontaneous style. Okay, so Kandinsky thought that the world was becoming too materialistic, and he wanted to go in a completely opposite direction. So he just basically started experimenting with colors and shapes just to create his own style of painting. In 1911, Kandinsky, along with his friend and fellow painter Franz Marc, founded an influential German expressionist group called Der Blaue Reiter, a German phrase meaning the blue rider. It was also the name of one of Kandinsky's early paintings. Members of the group did not subscribe to a common artistic style. Rather, they shared a distinct view of art making. They believed that a strong connection existed between the visual arts and music, the color that had symbolic meaning, and that the artist's true purpose was to express spiritual truths in spontaneous and innovative ways. Der Blue Rider disbanded in 1914 when World War I began. Franz Marc and another member of the group were killed in battle. Kandinsky, still a Russian citizen, was forced to leave Germany. So Kandinsky and his buddy, they decided to form this group, and they decided in this group that they weren't all going to paint the same way, but they all kind of wanted to have the same view of art in general. And their view was that colors meant something. Like red had a meaning like fire or war, and blue had a meaning like, just all colors had meanings. So, and then once the war started, their group expanded. Kandinsky had a deep appreciation for music. He believed that there was a synergy between the painter's process of organizing line, shape, and color on a canvas and the composer's process of arranging notes and other elements in a score. He gave musical titles to many of his paintings, such as composition and improvisation. Improvisation 31 is a series of paintings that Kandinsky created between 1909 and 1913. In it, Kandinsky expressed his inner self with color. But what about the subject of the painting? Art historians offer a variety of interpretations. The painting's secondary title, Sea Battle, suggests that it is an abstract image of warships locked in combat. Kandinsky denied assertions that improvisation was a symbol of any specific war, even though he created it on the eve of World War I. He maintained that the work represents a terrible struggle going on in the spiritual atmosphere. The symbolism in the painting possibly refers to the apocalyptic text in the Bible's book of Revelation. So you can click on this and you can look at the painting a little bit more closely. So Kandinsky felt like there was a huge connection between art and music, and he tried to demonstrate that in his artworks. But he also used a lot of symbolism, and the art historians were trying to, tell him what they thought that his paintings meant, but he wouldn't really answer them. He just basically said that, uh, the world's turning into a terrible place, is basically what he said. Kandinsky's style evolved from representational to abstract to completely non-representational. He came to believe that art should communicate the artist's inner feelings rather than merely record lifelike details. He believed that every color evokes a different emotion, from joy to anger to sadness. He assembled striking color combinations with bold, energetic lines to convey movement and depth. Rather than show the viewers exactly what a sea battle looks like, Kandinsky wanted viewers to experience its fury and its force. What type of feeling do you think Kandinsky was trying to express through his color choices in this painting right here? Do you think the representational colors would have been more effective? Why or why not? So, and then they want you to look at a few more styles. So, Kandinsky went from representational, meaning that everything represented something else, right? Like, an apple would be red, or an apple would have kind of an apple shape. Maybe not totally, but kind of an apple shape. Then he went to more abstract, and then he went to non representational, where anything could be anything. So, here is an example of representational art versus abstract art. With their shocking colors and flattened picture planes, the Fauves paved the way for other new approaches to painting in the 20th century. Kandinsky built on those conventions and developed his own radical style. He pushed the concept of abstraction to new heights. Explore influences on Kandinsky activity on the next screen to view some of the works that shaped Kandinsky's style. And you can go through all of these pictures. Okay, born in the Prussian city of Königsberg in 1867, Kathy Schmidt was part of a politically progressive family who encouraged her artistic talents. At the age of 14, she enrolled in private art classes and went on to study art in Berlin, where she met and married a medical doctor, Karl Kollwitz. Her husband's patients would later become the subject of her many artworks. The Kollwitzes were both deeply committed to social justice. He set up his medical practice in Berlin's poorest neighborhood, and she used her artwork to champion the rights of the underprivileged. Kollwitz was attracted to the democratic nature of printmaking, a process that enabled artists to produce many copies of their artworks inexpensively. For 50 years, she produced etchings, woodcuts, and lithographs that addressed themes of poverty, women's rights, and war. The traumatic effects of World War I shaped the content and style of many German artists. Kollwitz was no exception. Her son Peter was killed in the war, and for the rest of her life, she suffered from bouts of deep depression. In the post-war era of the 1920s, she produced intensely personal self-portraits that expressed her feelings of helplessness, despair, and the acknowledgement of the inevitability of her own death. This pose conveys her resigned and thoughtful nature as the weight of her head rests heavily on her hand. She was ruthless in her own self-examination, and she was admired for the direct way in which she depicted herself. Unlike many of her contemporaries who aligned themselves with a particular artistic movement, like Der Blue Reiter, Kollwitz worked independently in the expressionist style, using expressionist techniques to convey her feelings about social conditions and personal loss. Kollwitz relied on bold, expressive lines in deep black to convey her emotion and create the illusion of three-dimensional form. Her strong directional marks are clearly visible and seem to almost vibrate on the page. In some areas, she used cross-hatching, which is lines going this way and this way, to create deep shadows, while the others in thick black lines move in a single direction. She created highlights by leaving the paper bare in just the right places. Notice her forehead, nose, and lips. And on this page, you can click through and you can notice here's the cross hatching and here are the upward lines that they were talking about previously.